Right. Hey everyone, I'm Klloo, and welcome to some flesh and blood discussion, even though we're here on Talishire. So, right, the great book burning of Wraith is upon us. Now, we are going to touch on the banned and restricted announcement, but I wanted to first take a look at the current state of draw, right? The generic draw packages, the generic card advantage packages that Flesh and Blood still has access to, because basically, if you don't know, that is the main gist of the ban restricted announcement that just came out, right? They have targeted all forms of a non-contested card advantage, right? That's the easiest way to sum it up, right? So anything you can play and it's no interaction from your opponent, it just generates card advantage regardless of the level of setup or anything else that has had to have gone into it. That is what they have removed from the game, and that is what they plan to limit and better control going forward across the board. Now, I have very mixed feelings about the actual ban restricted announcement, and we will go through it briefly, but again, why don't we just take a look at what draw is left, right? So we don't have Tome, we don't have Art of War, we don't have Cash In, right? They're the main generic big ones, but what we still have is a lot of ways still to manipulate and set up board states to, again, lead to card advantage in a very similar circumstance to that which was removed. But the one fundamental difference of what is left, right, what can be utilized for card advantage, is everything that is left has the constraints of having a on-hit interaction, right? So for instance, with Toba Ferendale, you can take Mage Master Boots and it's a button combo to net you cards, right? You could take Cash In with Crown of Dominion, you get the gold, or you set up the gold prior to that, and it becomes a one card, throw it out, generate card advantage. Whereas everything that's left, Coax Commotion, in combination with Amulet of Assertiveness, or Pursuit of Knowledge, Nourishing Emptiness, all of that has the constraints of having to do damage, land, and then generate its effect, right? So again, it is contested draw, contested card advantage. So yeah, we'll quickly go through what is left, right? So we'll start off by playing Coax Commotion, and the Coax Commotion chain is nice and simple, right? You play it, and then you have Amulets of Assertiveness, and you're able to convert an Amulet of Assertiveness depending on what card you hit. Has to be something with Go Again, has to be something with Draw, Snatches, Mischievous Meeps, although that has the one cost, so you have to get around that. More Coax Commotions. There's quite a few cards that you can still target, right, to convert an Amulet of Assertiveness into card advantage, but again, has that constraint of not only does the first Coax Commotion have to hit successfully, but then everything you play after that has to hit successfully, right? So it is, again, a better form of interaction between you and your opponent that will potentially lead to your advantage. Now, I do want to outline that the biggest downside of this is it is all win more, right? Plain and simple. You would take this package and you would play it if it was going to win you more, right? In the circumstances where you actually get the card advantage from doing these types of setups, right? You are ahead. Because not only are you now getting the damage of everything you're pouring into it to gain the card advantage, but then you also get the card advantage. Whereas something like a Tome or a Cash in the majority of heroes/classes, you have to sacrifice something in the setup to then get your card advantage later on. And now that later on could still spiral into, obscene amounts of damage, but you still had to set up prior, right? And gain no benefit, or usually no benefit, to then gain the card advantage. All of this is still pressuring damage, right? You're still playing the normal push and pull tug of war game of Flesh and Blood, but if you succeed it, you get way ahead, right? So that is something to consider and think about, because I do think in that scope, what they have removed is kind of a little questionable. But Coax Commotion will hit, right? We've got the 3 Amulets of Assertiveness, so from that we banish 2 more Coaxes. As Snatch, the Coaxes will then generate more Quickens, again, if they land. But from here, we can take the Draw a card, we can take the Quicken, might as well take the Health, why not, right? So we do that, and now we're at 5 cards, right? In all my chit-chat, I forgot to use the Snapdragon Scalers, which is fine, we can use it at this step. There we go, there's the go again. So again, you still have to have input, right? You still have to take Feed or some other combination, or be a hero that already has this type of mentality, right? Any hero that still, does wide well, or tempo well, or aggro well, whatever you want to call it, is more successful. Again, these are win more packages in those heroes that were, again, mostly the problems when it came to Art of War, Tome, or Cash In, or that instant burst of card advantage. So that, again, is something to really think about and consider, right? That they've just shifted the metric, and they've removed the universal card advantage that could have helped prop up a lot of underperforming heroes, right? But that should be a bit better. It has go again. We get our 3 cards, so we get the action points, and then we can stack the Quicken token. Now, what I would like to see them handle going forward is further use of intellect buffing, right? Because intellect buffing, when it comes to card advantage, is a lot better performing, right? Because any card advantage you get is limited. You can't stack it as well as just card draw, because it will, you know, you can't go past your intellect. It's at the end phase, so you don't get it straight away. You get it on the defensive, on the rebound, and then maybe going into a more aggressive turn. So overall, intellect is a significantly better way for them to handle card advantage going forward, right? Think about if tome or cash-in was what they said, but instead of draw 2, it was game 1 intellect. That would be a very viable and I think balanced reprint, right? So that's something that I personally hope to see. But now that we have the Quicken chain started, what we can do is we can play Pursuit of Knowledge, consume the Quicken charge, right? Pitch for it. And then while it's on the chain but hasn't actually resolved or done damage, we can use even bigger than that. Now you also need, obviously, things in your deck to line up a bit better, right? As soon as we start involving more cards, then the card advantage becomes more difficult to pull off in a actual standard deck, which is another rationale for why I don't think Cash-In or Tome of Fairy should have been removed across the board, because they are still cards you have to find in your deck, right? And if you're a class that has to set up for it, you have to find the setup and then the draw. And that is a balancing act, right? So in all honesty, I would have much rather seen hero-specific bans, right? But we can leave the Nourishing Emptiness at the top, so even bigger than that, we'll draw it, and from that, right, we'll do our 5, we'll get our intellect buff, and then here we'd be able to play Nourishing Emptiness off of the Quicken, right? And you could stay with the 2 intellect, so you draw up to 6 at the end. You can make that longer. You can get a playoff that plays everything, right? All 3 Pursuits of Knowledge, all 3 Nourishing Emptiness. Granted, Memorial Ground and a lot of juggling and a lot of setup. So again, win more concept in a hero that pitch stacks, right? And cycles through their deck effectively. Wizard, right? So they still have access to these, but a lot of other heroes and classes don't, because what you need to do to have this work doesn't quite work in those classes of heroes, unlike Cash-In or Tome of Fairy or anything like that, right? So again, Nourishing and Pursuit both do intellect, so right now it's kind of useless because we're actually going to draw through it. Nonetheless, we will stack up our hand and then get to the other goodies, right? Gold is definitely a strong talking point, but here we can, since we have a Quicken going, we can just repeat play, Coax Commotion, get the draw off, which converts that Amulet of Assertiveness or the Banish card into an actual card in hand, right? Making it powerful. Coax again, do the same thing. And then since this generates Quicken, we can Snatch, and then we can still Nourishing Emptiness, right? And since they're all on the chain, we still get the Dominate effect, and we still get the Intellect bonus. But again, we've overdrawn our hand, so this is, once more I want to reiterate, where Intellect is a significantly better way to balance draw and card advantage, and something that has been hugely underutilized, right? In Fab across the board. We've never seen a hero with less or more, right? And we have very little cards, right? It's Nourishing Emptiness, it's the one Wizard one as well, right? There's a few that make it minus. I might be crazy. And just Pursuit of Knowledge. Those are the only ones that come to mind. I think there's a weird Guardian one as well, right? But yeah, so we can play Nourishing Emptiness. Because we have the Quicken token, it's fine. Hits, right? We're still ahead on cards overall, right? We're still, we'd be more cards ahead if I didn't play the Pursuit or the Knowledge, the Nourishing Emptiness, but we're still 1 card ahead, right? There's still a lot of ways to for the same amount of cards, generate card advantage. And in one aspect, it will be nice to see. In fact, we get the 2 cards because of the Pursuit and Knowledge, right? It will definitely be nice to see a lot more utility cards enter the space, right? But again, for a lot of heroes, a lot of classes, it's equivalent, right? Playing Pursuits, playing Nourishing Emptiness, comboing them together, playing Coax Commotion and Snatches, trying to combo them together, aside from the RNG element, are still the same amount of deck slots for most classes and heroes, right? For most classes and heroes that require setup for, again, Cash-In or Tome of Fairy or even Art of War. But now we get to Gold, and Gold is a very, very tricky thing, because their whole rationale for Cash-In is once Gold becomes more of a prevalent thing, more utilized thing, or is further expanded upon in a further set, then Cash-In becomes a problem. And to me, that is so weird, because gold is already a problem in the essence that there's no way to speed it up, right? In a standard use of gold, you use 3 gold, 2 pitchables to generate 1 extra card, right? Adding something else into it, for instance, a charge of Farendel's Spring Tunic, resource cheating, any form of resource cheating, then speeds that up, right? If you have some way to cover that cost, like an Amulet of Ignition, which you can play, right? We now only have to use 2 gold to get card advantage. So we can go gold, pitch, only requires 1. We have the 2 floating, meaning the second gold we play is free, and we get instant card advantage, right? 2 things to set up, and better yet, Amulet of Ignition has go again. So it's very easy to set up. Now, equivalent to cash in, you have energy potions. You can use energy potions in conjunction with gold to do exactly what cash in does. You still have to get the gold on board. The only difference is, unlike cash in that has go again and can be used on the turn you draw it, an energy potion requires setup. So they've only added a little stopgap into it, right? But you can still use the same setup, the same rationale, especially if you are one of those classes that they outlined has easy ways to generate action points and go again, right? That made Tome problematic, Wizard, and Mechanologist. They can throw out an energy potion, and then they can use gold in the exact same instance as they would with cash in, right? As instant 1 card advantage. So just from energy potions, you can get 3 cards advantage all in burst. And worse yet, right? Unlike cash in where you have to find it through the deck. It's all on board. They've taken, again, the toolkit away from everyone. And what they have left, in my honest opinion, is win more for every hero that they outlined that the draw they took away was most impactful in. Because they're the ones where, again, attacking in a burst to try and generate draw does well. They are the heroes that generate action points or circumvent the downside of energy potions or these other utilities and do well. So yeah, it's a little bit baffling to me, right? And questionable what they've targeted, but you can still get a massive hand with, again, a similar level of setup that requires a similar level of RNG. And gold is still a problematic case. And again, from my perspective, there are still various things equivalent that should have been targeted. I mean, come on. Should Tunic be a thing, right? It is the universal contender for best in slot for every single hero. A green dress, right? Thematically, is the best in slot for every single hero. But it's also the roots of so many of these issues, right? All of the draw that was taken out for Bolton, for instance, worked well with his chess piece. Worked well with 12 petals. Any form of resource cheating, to me, is the real big culprit that should be looked at, examined, but more importantly, specific bans, right? Now, that's the draw. As you can see, I still have a massive hand. I'd still be able to combo off and do a hell of a lot of burst. Regardless, take away 2, right? And we'll just go with the gold setup. 1 Amulet of Ignition with 2 gold, plus 3 energy potions with 1 gold. 4 extra cards, right? Throw in Tunic, 2 extra gold. That'd be 5 extra cards. That'd be 10 cards to run away with burst damage. Very doable and very, very detrimental, but again, a win more state, right? Whew. How did they get so many cards? Wasn't paying attention. Alright, Coax Commotion makes them draw 2 and they don't play anything. That's how. But yeah, so that is the current state of draw. Again, all the packages are very equivalent, right? Anywhere you take cash in, energy potion, especially again if you're those heroes that run rampant, or Amulets of Ignition. Amulet of Ignition and gold is still a very, very easy toolkit to run in most decks because it doesn't impede some of your plays. The loss of block, maybe, is a bit detrimental, but again, go again, set up, and away you go. So, let's talk about the ban. Now, the number one takeaway that I gather from this, and I may be absolutely wrong, is unfortunately a continued lack of ability to manage the scope of the game that LSS has been building up, right? They lack the ability to functionally keep up with the amount of heroes, classes that they are implementing into the game, right? We have what, 30 some active heroes? Well, no, it'll be 30 some come Rosetta. We have 27 active heroes at the moment, class constructed, right? The number 1 format. Throw in 4 more, plus Ira, the new Ira. So that's 32 active Maybe Dash goes, maybe she doesn't, but either way, right? 32 active heroes for them to work with. And what we see is a lack of support across the board, right? This is actually really good to see, though, right? They've only missed out on a few, right? Going off of who has generated points, who is underperforming at the moment, but it is the truth. They lack the ability to adequately test, adequately develop for the number of classes and heroes that they have produced, right? So at the moment, the development cycle is about 1 to 2 years to revisit any specific class hero talent combination. And that to me is incredibly slow. And what we are getting to supplement that is also incredibly slow from my perspective, right? We get Armory decks, which is a handful of new cards, right? And a attempt at introducing or reaffirming X archetype. And then we have the expansion slot, which is also a handful of cards. And a handful of cards that at this point doesn't even target every hero available, right? They are, in a sense, cherry picking who they want to see in the meta. Plain and simple, right? They have a course that they've laid out. They have the next 3 sets planned. They know what they're envisioning for the next 5 years, but we don't. And for a strategic card game, that worries me because I want the ability to have input into the strategy. And while the community runs away with, again, class and hero testing, because LSS doesn't have the resources to do so adequately, it is still worrisome that they, again, cherry pick a lot of things and they micromanage and they control and they do things very conservatively. And it, again, in some circumstances, to me, feels like the meta isn't really player-driven. It is strictly LSS-driven. And it's not, a 50-50 is what they foresee or what they sort of planned, more so than anything, right? Either Rosetta overperforms or underperforms. And I would highly assume for Sail Wars, they want it to overperform, right? So there has been a big change to the design principles. And again, the main thing is they want any form of advantage to be contested, right? So cards that immediately net additional cards without costing an action point, extreme offensive overlaps that result in a player being reduced to 0 life, right? Card advantage is the number one thing they're tackling, and they want that to be more interactive. They want it to be contested, which is, again, why they have removed basically all of the main forms of card advantage available to everyone, as well as the top performing heroes. They haven't tackled or, right, I guess they touch on 3 of a kind, Tome of Harvest, Tome of the Arcanine, Tome of Imperial Flame. I find Tome of Imperial Flame really questionable because obviously that did perform really well and they know it did perform really well, but I'm guessing they don't want to preemptively ban it until they reprint Dromai and then pull it out from her, right? But yeah, so they have pulled out the cards that are currently running away. Dash, top of the leaderboard, right? Mechanologist listed. Lightning Heroes coming out, or Wizards bypassing action points, everything that's coming out. Again, cash in, preemptively banned, right? Because as gold becomes more prevalent, it becomes lower and lower, which again is kind of a weird way to phrase it. I understand what they're trying to say, right? As gold becomes easier to generate, then the randomness of having to find both the setup and cash in to make it an effective card advantage card becomes easier and easier, and they want to get rid of that. But again, still lots of ways to do it, still lots of ways to use gold other than cash in, and on board is significantly better than in hand, right? Equipment showcases that fundamentally. And same with Art of War. Again, they really point out where things are most problematic. But again, these are blanket bans. And I would much rather see a specific ban, right, where these cards are problematic. Because for a lot of underdeveloped heroes, or heroes that, again, were once developed but now are falling behind as other heroes and classes get more cards, these are a wonderful toolkit fillers, right? They are wonder cards that do a lot of things, and they do a lot of things well. And that is not necessarily a bad thing, right? In the future, absolutely, may be a bad thing. But again, they have their plan. We're not privy to that. We don't know what it is, right? We can surmise from what they're doing, but they're doing everything preemptively before the impact is actually made. So we get the negative before we see the positive, and that leaves a sour taste in my mouth, right? So again, There is still a great amount of card advantage, right, that you can utilize. It is just now taxed behind hit effects. So if you're a hero that is great at pushing damage and getting damage across or buffing cards, well, you're in luck. These are now win more cards. Any hero that, utilize Tome, Art of War, or Cash In, or any of the other tomes in a utility way, right? For instance, like Tome of Divinity. Sure, it's win more in Prism. It's good in Bolton. It's not great, but was this necessary, right? It's another hit to Bolton, who's already, middle ground. So, yeah, I don't like seeing the blanketness. I don't like seeing them double down, especially when they acknowledge where cards are problematic and that they know where the cards are problematic to, again, remove the valuable cards from the underdeveloped toolkits that they are struggling to develop in a timely manner, right? So yeah, overall, my main takeaway is it is course correction. It is course correction that they are capable of doing. It is not the best course correction in my opinion, but again, with the resources that they have, this is the course correction that they are capable and confident in implementing. It's a bit preemptive, right? I mean, they acknowledge that too, that this was meant to be later on in October. But again, with Rosetta, they want these cards not to have an impact as much, right? Mainly Aetherwind, Divinity. You could also take it as a stance as they're not so confident that the Rosetta heroes will stand up to, say, Mistveil, and they needed to knock that down a peg. Maybe, right? So yeah, overall, it's fundamentally a good change, but was it the best change for them to make? I don't know. Absolutely, right? It is a show of, again, a lack of resources and ability to manage the scope of the game that they've been building up for 5 years, which I've always thought would eventually be a problem. And again, this whole year was about introducing more heroes, and I was hoping they'd have a better plan for managing that. And it seems like we will be getting better things, right? We'll have the Blitz, we'll have the Armory decks, we will have the, God, what are they? They're not archival, that's for Japan, but we'll have specific single class supplemental sets, I think is the go, right? Something like that. So yeah, overall, healthy changes, just healthy changes on a budget is what we'll go with, and acknowledgement that they know full well where these cards are specifically problematic. But again, the simplest and easiest thing for them to do is remove it across the board, regardless of whether or not it's for development reasons. Again, they have the next 3 sets plans. If they have a proper rationale, I don't think it's truly expressed here, right? At least it's vague, and I think that's the wrong way to go when, again, the game is hugely community driven. And yeah, so it's bittersweet, but there's still draw out there if you want draw. That's my honest opinions. I was very, very jaded the first time I read this, and it's been easing in, right? Again, through the scope of what they can do, what they want to do, what should be done versus, again, just the middle ground of all that. And hopefully the changes that these are preemptive for are great, fantastic, healthy. We'll just have to wait and see. That's the big thing. I think they're always a bit too preemptive in what they implement, and they have to wait. Everyone has to wait to see if it's good or bad, right? Well, I should say how good / bad it is, because this is, again, absolutely a healthy change for the game. I just don't think it was the best healthy choice, right? Again, hero-specific bans is what I would have argued for, but we are seeing a double down, if you will. That will never be the case, regardless of whether or not they wholeheartedly know, right, that things are a problem in X instead of all, right? Anyway, give it a read. It is definitely worthwhile. It is very fundamental to the future of Fab. But there you go. Hope you enjoyed. So, yeah.